Take it away, Keith.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. I think one thing we've decided that we ought to do to begin is to introduce ourselves and our role here. And so I'm going to have everybody do that just for the folks who are either tuning in and for the public record as well. But there will be public members who are probably tuning in, and let's just make sure that everybody knows who we are and what our role is here. And so I think I'll start, and I'm Keith Temchuk on the Elliott State Research Forest Advisory Board or Management Board. I'm the chair, and I'm just going to go people in the order I see them. So I'll go with board members first. Jennifer, Mike, Peter, Peyton, those are the ones I see. So let's do that, and then we'll go with staff.
Sounds good. Jennifer Allen on the Elliott board. Good to be here today.
Mike Kennedy on the Elliott board. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. This is Peter Hayes, and I'm a Elliott board member.
Good morning, everyone. Peyton Smith, Elliott board member.
And I don't see Melissa or Haley yet. Are they on?
Haley's here. Yep, Melissa's here.
Okay, Haley?
Good morning, Haley Lutz, Elliott board member.
And who did I miss? I missed somebody.
Can you hear me? All right.
Melissa, there you are.
Good morning, Melissa Cribbins, Elliott board member.
And that's 7. And
I think that's all.
and Mike's not here. Mike, you said Mike wasn't here. Okay, thanks. Staff, Darren, Emma, Hannah, and whoever else I'm missing.
Good morning, everybody. Darren Gooding, the Elliott State Research Forest Manager.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Sloan. I'm the Policy and Partnerships Coordinator for the Elliott.
Hi, I'm Hannah Beveridge. I'm the Executive Assistant.
Good morning. I'm Amy Price. I'm the forest biologist on the Elliott.
Good morning. I'm Caitlin Athern. I'm the forester on the Elliott State Research Forest.
Hey, Caitlin, welcome, by the way. Were you here for the last meeting? I think not, right?
No, I was out on my honeymoon.
Well, a lousy excuse.
Thank you.
But welcome. And I think that's it. And so one last point before we get started, and that's to simply let you know that we will have a chance for public comment later in the day. And I think that we're going to use that for Caitlin is going to be here and come in later. She's at a more important meeting right now, as you can well understand, and she's going to be here sometime around 11 or 10:30 or 11, and we'll let her talk about her next adventure when she shows up and when we begin public comment. So with that, then. For the recording, the date is July 9, 2025, and I call this meeting of the Elliott State Research Forest Board of Directors to order. Board members, as I call your name, I think we've done that. We've already given a present here in terms of your responses, so I won't do that in a formal way. Today's agenda includes 3 staff updates, 2 status updates on prior board recommendations, 2 action and advisory items, 1 relating to the proposed budget allocations, the second to the composition of board subcommittees. We will end our meeting with a discussion of the forest manager's work plan, as well as a review of action items and assignments from today's meeting. We plan to adjourn by 12:30 as scheduled. Before we move into our discussion items, I'd like to direct the board's attention to the minutes from our last meeting, which were circulated in advance and are included in your meeting packet. Please take a moment to review if you've not done already. And if anyone identifies any corrections or errors that are in the minutes, I'm going to seek a comment and a correction now? Does anybody find one? Perfect. I didn't find one either, so we'll move on. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the June 11 meeting as submitted. So I'll need a motion and a second if we can do that.
I move that we accept the minutes. This is Peter.
Okay, we got a motion for Peter and a second from Mike. Is that you?
I'll second it, yes. When it comes to discussion, I do have a quick question on that, though.
Okay, let's do that right now if you would, and then we'll call a vote.
Okay, I notice in the minute or in the summary that it mentions who the public comments came from, but there was no mention of what the actual comments were. And I was just curious why those weren't included. It would seem that we should include those sort of things in a meeting summary.
That's a good point, Mike. Yeah, we haven't discussed policy or procedure around summarizing the public comments received, in person in the meeting. They are available in the recording, but perhaps that's something we can discuss internally and perhaps model after what they do in the land board meetings. Hannah, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I put the names, and I believe it was modeled after the land board method of putting the names and then the full statement is in the recording, but happy to include a summary of that as well.
Okay, thanks. And I think that is a good thing to include in the notes or the meeting notes as well. All right, we do have a motion and a second. Then all those in favor, we'll do that with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think we have, if I got it right, we had everybody with in favor and no opposition. So thank you. The minutes are improved. We'll now move into staff updates and announcements. Amy Price, forest biologist, will give an update on the implementation and adaptive management and the adaptive management committee. Emma Sloan will update us on the fall board retreat. There's some discussion to be had there, and Darren will provide an update on upcoming hiring. So, Amy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Keith. Good morning. After we've adopted our biennial operations plan and have received the approval for our HCP, which is the Habitat Conservation Plan, we're now preparing to begin forest management. The Implementation and Adaptive Management Committee, or the IAMC, is going to play a central role in helping us to ensure that the Elliott is managed adaptively, transparently, and in alignment with our core commitments. This committee is designed to support the adaptive management framework outlined in our forest management plan and also in our habitat conservation plan. It will be a technical and advisory body. The IAMC will review our implementation, our monitoring outcomes, and help us assess when and how we may need to adjust our practices. The IAMC will provide scientific, technical, and policy input for the forest manager, Darren, and for the rest of us, the DSL staff on the Elliott, to make sure that what's happening on the ground continues to reflect the values and direction of our forest management plan and our harvest conservation plan. So we're planning to start recruitment for the IAMC this fall, and we're hoping to have one of the Elliott State Research Forest board members participate. So hoping to recruit one of you to be on that committee. Thanks.
And where else are we seeking members for that committee?
Also from tribal input, potentially from academic, could be Oregon State University or another research partner, other land management or research force, like perhaps someone from the H.J. Andrews or Oregon Department of Forestry, Bureau of Land Management. Emma and I have talked about a little bit that a really large committee could be unwieldy, so trying to keep it somewhat small. But there were the 3 members that are pretty much mandatory are from our regulatory agencies, from the Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and NOAA from NIMS. So there's those 3 positions have already, they're just kind of hardwired in.
And do we have folk from each one of those organizations who've already been told?
Yes, we do. We have Colleen Holland from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Jeff Young from NOAA, and Amy Dar from ODF&W.
Okay, thanks. And board, any comments here, questions? I'd suggest that if you're interested, then you reach out to Darren and Amy and get your name in the hopper. Anybody here with comments at this point? Okay.
Thanks, Keith.
You bet. And I think Emma, you're up next, correct?
Yeah. Okay, we've been talking about a board retreat for a little bit now, and we're coming around the bend with fall. This is our 5th board meeting, or excuse me, I think this is our 4th board meeting of the year, and that per our oversight structure required to have 5 board meetings. So it's likely that this fall board retreat that we're planning will be our 5th and final meeting. We've chatted with each of you about what you'd like to get out of a board retreat. And there's a number of things that people spoke up about, mostly getting to know each other, building relationships, going over some of our foundational documents and commitments, and then looking ahead to how we want to design our research program, research framework, and work out some of our equity and community engagement components. So following this meeting, you're going to receive a Microsoft form for you to fill out and provide some input into the retreat, both dates. We're looking at mid-late October through November. You currently have November 12th blocked on your calendar for the final meeting of the year. So we are aiming for that date, but we know it's difficult to get all board members in one place for 2.5 days. So we're trying to be flexible, but if you can make that November 12th period work, that would be awesome. And then we also just want to get more feedback on potential agenda items. So if you have any questions or concerns about the retreat, things you'd like to add, feel free to reach out to me or just drop it in the form. Does anyone have any questions they want to address now?
Yeah, I'm going to let Emma throw this to Darren and you and Melissa in a quick synopsis here of the discussion we had yesterday in our run through for the board members of the timing of the retreat and the timing of potentially filling an open board member spot, and how that all fits together. You guys somebody want to jump in and talk about that, Melissa or Darren or Emma?
I can speak to that. So we have 3 board members who are up for reappointment this October. And then we have one board member one board seat that we may be looking to fill also in October. So that leaves potentially 4 open seats, depending on the process for recruitment, reappointment, and applications. So we're aiming for November in order to get all those positions filled at the October land board meeting. So the land board is the final appointing body for the Elliott Advisory Board. So that'll give us the opportunity to have those positions confirmed in October and a full board be present for the retreat in November. Does that provide clarification, Keith?
I think so, right? Any follow-up questions or comments? And I saw that I'd requested of the 3 board members whose positions actually end in October because their appointment was a short one, to send a note to Melissa and I, to Darren and Emma, if they were interested in a reappointment. I think that I've seen one of those emails in my Gmail, so thanks. And I'm assuming that we'll see the next shortly. So, any comments on initial comments on a board retreat in November? And I think that would be an afternoon, a full day, and a morning. So it'd be there'd be 2 nights there.
Yep, that's what we're hoping for.
Okay.
Okay.
Seeing none, then Darren, I think I'm up to you, right?
That is correct. So I have some hot off the press news here for some recruitment information here especially for the research coordinator position. Been working with HR on that. Actually just met with them this morning, and we're getting ready to actually get the vacancy announcement out. It should actually go out next week. I just have a little bit of finalization for the vacancy announcement, make a little bit of edits and do that. And we've already done some internal conversation here about scheduling. I'll be reaching out to individuals for interview panels and those type of things here. Now that I kind of have a time frame based on when the recruitment would start. So stay tuned for that. We should be able to see that coming out on the Oregon State website, hopefully next week for the research coordinator position. The other position that's on the list of vacancies for the Elliott State Research Forest is the data specialist position. That's one that I had also been working on in the background on a position description. I have just a little bit left of some tweaking in after getting some additional input from staff on that as well. Be submitting that, working with HR, with DSL to finalize that, and that gets submitted to be, that position goes through the classification process next. And so that means HR works with state DAS to do that, since that's a new position. Make sure that they're fine with what the new PD will be. And then once we have that back, we'll move into the same type of process, the next steps with that we're doing right now with the research coordinator position of preparing a vacancy announcement and prepping for that process. So I would envision that that'll be not too far in the distance future behind the research coordinator, as long as everything goes through smoothly. So we're on track to get our other 2 positions that have been approved by the legislature filled in the short term.
Okay. Questions? Will apologize here. I want to back up a little bit. Catherine, I realized that I didn't give you any time to say anything about your background, where you're coming from, and why you've joined up this motley crew. And so I'm going to give you a little bit now, if you'd like to introduce yourself more than just saying hello.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's Caitlin.
Caitlin. Okay.
Caitlin Athern, that's why the name says basically
Got
Catherine.
it. Okay, I wondered. I thought you said Caitlin to begin. My bad.
Yes. Sure. I'm been with the Forest Service for 8 years previous to this. I'm in silviculture and forestry. And I live in Brookings currently, trying to find a place in Coos Bay. But I took this opportunity because I think it's very exciting and unique, and a chance to really do something new and exciting. And the connection to research for me is really important and very cool. I did a lot of research stuff when I was in school, so it's cool to get back to that aspect of this.
I'm glad to have you. Thanks. I was just through Brookings the other day, twice over the last few days, once south, once north. So, okay, I think we're off to my comment here, and we're actually ahead of time. So a new slide. The Elliott State Research Forest Oversight Structure speaks to the importance of public engagement, and the board and DSL will solicit and provide public comment opportunities at each board meeting. So we originally said this would be 10:45. We're a little bit ahead of time, and I'll now
Hey,
open this
Keith.
meeting to public comment. Yeah,
Oh, I think you're getting a little bit ahead of yourself here.
am I?
We want, yeah. We have some status updates on the ops
Oh,
plan, the
okay. Yeah,
city
with
about
you're right.
formation of research. Yeah,
Yep, go
yeah.
ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Um,
So I think I'm actually up again still.
Go ahead,
So
Darren.
I'll jump back in here.
Yep.
So just as we recall from our the last board meeting and just last month in June, that the Research Forest Board recommended that I adopt the 2025 to 2027 biennial operations plan. And so I accepted that recommendation and completed and signed a decision memo approving that plan, which you have a copy of that in your board packets that then formally adopts the operations plan for the 25-27 biennium. So just wanted to get that out there and just point that out to you that that's in your packets and got that step completed. So with that, I'll pass it to Emma.
Okay, I'm doing a lot of frantic clicking here. I just wanted to update folks on the formation of the research subcommittee. So we'll talk more about subcommittees in our action item component of our agenda, but we did have the opportunity to have an initial meeting with members of the board who are interested in supporting the research program that we're developing under the Elliott. So what we spoke about was centering research as a core function of the Elliott, decisions and operations, ensuring that research questions that come to the Elliott are inclusive, they're practical, in that they're applied, can be used by land managers across the state, and that they're shaped by diverse stakeholders, not just academia. And then also there was interest in the board of clarifying governance roles between the Elliott board, the land board, Elliott staff, as well as balancing ecological and financial goals. So we can chat a little bit more about the research subcommittee later, but I do want to pause to see if anyone had any questions about the updates we've shared thus far before we move into our contact with neighboring landowners.
Anybody?
Okay, take it away, Darren.
Okay, another item from it's a follow-up item from the last meeting, and it's also a topic that had come up at previous board meetings as well, was um, following up on contacting with neighboring landowners, especially in particular, we did have, as everyone recalls, we did have a landowner present at our June meeting, kind of speaking to some issues that they had seen in the forest, and so wanted to make a point of following up about that. And so that topic's kind of tied to the new contract that we have with Coos County for the half-time deputy position, which I also kind of brought up at the last meeting as well. That agreement's been signed. There was a little bit of a delay, so we're a little past the first for the effective date of that. The effective date is actually not going to be the 11th. So, and I do have the information about about how the county is planning on staffing that. So one of the things that I committed to, and I think that's also in the packet too, I think was kind of a time frame for that, but with the contract not starting until this Friday, I'll be working with the sergeant that supervises the group of deputies that'll be doing some of the patrol work and do that coordination with them. I'm gonna ask them and see if we can do in the first 30 days of once we get the contract up and running here, if they can I'll work with them and get them the contact information for those neighboring landowners that we're aware of that have had some issues. Want to make sure that we're making a good point of doing some outreach with them and have the sheriff's deputy stop in and kind of chat with them about what they're seeing going on and how we're going to try to address some of that. So just want to bring the board aware of that's just as follow up from that topic from the last board meeting. So, and I'll that's something that I'll continue to report out on to the board about how things are going with that. there's any questions or anything on that.
Yeah, a couple, Darren.
Yeah.
Number one, oh, Peyton, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Oh.
Unmute.
Sorry, technical difficulties. I was just curious if there's like a certain amount of hours that they've committed to spending on the forest each month and what that is.
So yes, that was a particular request in the contract for 20 hours. So we are paying half time. We're paying for funding a half a deputy. So the expectation is that they will be on the Elliott for 20 hours, 20 hours a week. As part of that was also in that agreement is also an activity log, so that they'll produce and report back every month from the sheriff's office about what activities and kind of document that time that they're actually spending on the forest. So as another mechanism, and then I have contact information for the particular deputies that are assigned and their supervisors. So we'll make sure we're having that regular contact to make sure of, checking in on what things they're seeing, what issues we have, and make sure we're coordinating and getting the best for our, the resources for that contract.
Great, Darren. I'm glad you talked about the activity log. Mike, go ahead. You're raising your hand and I'm not, so jump in.
No problem. I just want to ask Darren too, will the deputy or deputies vary their schedule out there too, just so that we don't end up with everybody knowing that there's only somebody out there on certain days and times, and so the rest of the time is open for things that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, already a little bit ahead of you on that, Mike. That's one of from my experience, my past experience. Most everybody knows I also have a law enforcement background too. So, yeah, I mean that was one of the things I talked to the sergeant about. Yeah, that we will, we'll be doing a little bit of, especially as we start to do some of that. See when the best times to have deputy presence will be, and make sure that we're not just sticking to a strict schedule that everybody knows when a deputy will be on the forest, because that won't really help.
Yeah, and I think to touch on part of Mike's question, that will also include a patrolling over any period of time. They will have covered most of the forest. They're not going to be limited to just they're not limiting themselves to just a small portion of the forest. I hope. I'm assuming not. And does the fact that it's a Coos County sheriff impact the fact that also a significant portion of the forest is within Douglas County?
So on that, we also have an agreement with Douglas County, that separate agreement that's for Douglas County, but there's a little bit of an agreement, a handshake agreement between Coos and Douglas to cover some of that Douglas County portion too, if when the Douglas County deputy's not in the area. So we have that kind of coordination there as well. It's not written into the contract. It's kind of a handshake agreement between the two sheriffs from the two counties to work together on that for coverage.
Great, appreciate it. And can you, if it doesn't consume too much time, when you get that activity report from the sheriffs, can you share that with the board as well?
Yeah, that's certainly happy to share that information about, so everybody's aware of kind of what's going on the forest from that aspect. Yep, happy to do that.
Okay. All right, we have before any other raised hands that I promise not to interrupt. Okay, seeing none. So let me back up a little bit, and before I do the public comment spiel again, Caitlin, I think you've joined this level, correct? And if you are, the floor is yours, and I think we might like to hear about your potential future employment and talk about how your meeting went today.
Hi, everyone. So all of you on the board know I sent you an email, but for folks from the public who know, the State Lands Board just 15 minutes ago voted me as the next DSL director. So I will be resigning from the Elliott State Forest Board, but not leaving the Elliott, which I'm really excited about. And I will be starting in August. Bill Ryan has been named the interim in the meantime. And so we're both excited where you're going with this, and I'm incredibly grateful to have had the opportunity to really learn from you all and spent so much time in this at the beginning of this great work that you're doing, and time on the forest and in the community as well. So I'm excited to support you as best as possible as your next director. Thank you all.
And we had a raised
Congratulations.
hand. Who was that? Jennifer?
That was me just saying congratulations. Very exciting.
Mike?
Also, just congratulations, Caitlin.
And I think I speak for all of us. We say very, very cool and congratulations. And we hate to see you go, but it's a very good deal for Oregon. So thanks.
Thank you. And we will, I'm excited too that I get to help start recruiting my replacement for you guys. And so I promise to make sure it's the very best person to complement all of you guys.
Thanks. Are you hanging around for a while?
Yes, I'm going to join you in the afternoon actually for the ethics training because that's pretty important. So
Okay.
I will see
All
you
right.
later this afternoon. Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thanks for taking the time. And again, congratulations from all of us.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Keith,
Yeah.
instead of moving to public comment, I think we could take a 10-minute break now. So folks who were maybe planning to join at 10:45 don't miss their chance. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, let's do that I'll see everybody back at 10:45 then. Does allow us to stay on schedule for public comment and then move forward. So go find a cup of coffee or whatever you need. And Jennifer, I'm assuming those, because you're small on my screen, the things that floated up your screen either look like party hats or pieces of pizza. So I'm assuming they were
Party hats for
okay.
Caitlin.
Okay. See everybody in 8 or 9 minutes.
You're muted.
Yeah, there we go. Hey all, thanks for getting back promptly, and I think everybody's on board. So this is the time we set aside for public comment. If you are a member of the public, to comment, raise your hand by clicking the raise your hand or press 9 if you're on the phone. We'll get a hold of you in order of the hands being raised. Keep your mic muted, please, until it's your turn. When it's your turn, state your name. You'll be called upon, state your name and where you are and the organization you are representing, if you're representing an organization. And then also, as always, please remember to keep your comments to 3 minutes or under. Okay, with that, I think I see one hand raised. And Francis, that's you. Thanks for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I was curious on what was going on.
Francis, I'm going to ask you to identify yourself and where you are and organization and all that.
I'm Frances Etherington. I've enjoyed the Elliott for many years for recreation. I live in the Coast Range west of Roseburg, just south of the Elliott. And so that's who I am.
Well,
Sometimes I volunteer with Cascadia Wildlands or Umpqua Watersheds So anyway, it was a quick question I have, and what's going on with the coastal martin? The coastal martin is an endangered species, and it wasn't included in the habitat conservation plan. And so when I went and reviewed the timber sales for the Elliott State Forest, I noticed that there was some regeneration harvest that was adjacent to be a hard line on a mature forest. I wondered if the murrelets were surveyed in that mature forest that's adjacent to a proposed clear cut, but I'm more wondering what the conservation efforts are going on with the coastal martin in concerning the logging. Have you surveyed for them in the logging proposal units?
Darren, staff?
I will defer that to my forest biologist, Amy Price.
Hi, Francis. I don't know if you recall, but you've posed this question already. I think it was in a written comment, and we have responded.
I haven't seen the response. I looked on the Elliott State webpage looking for a response to comments and I couldn't find it there.
Okay. I wasn't super prepared for this to have the exact wording from our HCP, but Fish and Wildlife Service has determined that there isn't a sustaining population of martins on the forest. Not to say that they couldn't cross the forest, but we don't have a population, and therefore it's not considered in the HCP for those reasons.
Well, and can I
The-
just interrupt you real quickly?
Sure.
Sorry. I mean, there is a known population just 6 miles from the Elliott. So,
Right.
they got to be on the Elliott when they're known to be just a whole group of them 6 miles away.
For some unknown reason, they don't seem to be able to maintain a population east of Highway 101. Very aware of the population to the west of us. There have been scat dog surveys on the Elliott and baited camera traps on the Elliott and zero detections. Any previous detections on the forest there have been were pre-1960. And those are questionable because we can't validify them. But in recent times, zero in any of the surveys, and the Fish and Wildlife Service has determined that they're not a species of concern on the Elliott.
So, you aren't going to survey for them in their when you modify their habitat?
No. And I can share with you the passages from the biological opinion on our habitat conservation plan, the specific language. If you want me to, we can talk after this meeting. But and then, like I said, we have addressed this before for public comment, but I'm happy to talk to you at length.
And the other quick question I have, when you do a regen harvest that's adjacent to merlet habitat, I don't see any survey results for the merlets in the habitat that's going to get a new hard line.
So the habitat conservation plan is a different approach than what you probably are used to, which is take avoidance. Because we have lots of conservation measures in place to protect our merlet populations, we don't do pre-project clearance surveys.
Okay.
And I'm happy to talk to you about that further as well.
Sure. Okay, thank you for your responses.
Francis, you can find our response to your comments in our prior board packet on the webpage. We included all of our responses in there, and I apologize because that's not a totally obvious place to find responses to your comments. So we'll work with our comms department to get those responses up in a more obvious location on our website.
Well, thanks
But
for
feel
telling
free
me
to reach out to us.
Thanks for telling me
Go
where
ahead.
they are, and I'll go look for them now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
And if I can, for the general public, not for Francis, who I'm sure is way ahead of me, I did a quick look at searched up the federal martin or the martin habitat, and I think we're the area closest to the Elliott would be what in the Federal Register documents says Unit 3, which is the Coos Bay unit, Douglas and Coos counties. This unit consists of approximately 600 or 15,402 acres and encompasses the southern portion of the central coastal Oregon population of coastal martins in coastal Douglas and Coos counties. The unit extends from Winchester Bay south to the north spit of Coos Bay proper and lies entirely west of Highway 101. I think that that point was made, but I thought just for if there's public there interested, I thought I would touch on that very quickly.
Yes, we expect them to be able to cross that highway through a culvert or some other means eventually.
Thanks, Francis,
Thank you.
for the question. And Is there any other public? It's the only hand. Francis's hand was the only one I've seen raised. Anybody else would like to take advantage of this time? Well, okay, seeing none. Thank you, Francis, as always. And then let me clear this. And so we're on to the next slide. Emma, do you have that up for us? Okay, so board action and advisory items, the proposed budget allocations, and the formation and composition of the board subcommittees. And I'm going to give that to Darren and Emma to take it from here.
All right, thanks, Keith. So this is, as we probably recall from the last meeting, we brought the proposed budget to the last meeting in June, just as a heads up, knowing that we at that point did not have our budget bill for the agency had not yet been approved, signed by the governor, but now we're in that spot where the governor has signed our budget bill, and so wanted to come back obviously to the board with this proposed $10 million budget to support the full launch of the Elliott State Research Forest operations, moving from planning to implementation across research, management, conservation, and community benefit areas. Allocated funds, the allocation funds critical priorities such as full staffing, initiation of research, HCP implementation, infrastructure, and wildfire protection, just to name a few. Although this budget was developed prior to the board formation and include board input at our June meeting, future budget cycles will include upstream board input, because obviously we'll be in a different spot now going into when we're preparing for budget for 27, 29. There'll be much more opportunity as the agency starts to discuss that later, which will be probably actually later this year, starting to talk about thinking about for the next biennium already. There'll be that opportunity, obviously, to have more discussion and involvement with the board going through. It's like a number of our things we've done. This is kind of the one-off because of where we're at and this where we are with getting things stood up here in the forest. So, so this is what was in the packet was the same breakdown and spreadsheet that you saw at the last meeting. So at this point, I'm looking for, since we do have the agency budget, signed and approved by the governor, now looking for a recommendation from the board to actually a recommendation to approve this budget as presented to you.
Mike.
Quick question for you, Darren. I noticed under the staffing, the executive assistant position, this biennium anyway is being funded out of the director's office. Do you anticipate that to continue in the future, or will this position we need to budget for it under the Elliott funds?
That's a discussion probably for a bit into the future. At this time, we're planning on it staying in the director area, but that may change at some point over time.
Yeah, this is
That's
Chris.
Chris. Chris
Hi,
can
Mike.
jump in. Hey, Chris.
Hi. Yeah. So Hannah, in her capacity, is a executive support specialist in the director's office and serves to support not only the whole land management division, but also to help the pool of executive support specialists, which include Linda and Aaron. I do have a lot of her time dedicated to the Elliott, both South Slough. The other two parts of the division is South Slough and our real property program in Bend, who both have administrative support help as well. And Hannah does help backstop for those programs if folks are out or if they need assistance. So we're fortunate in that we do have, first of all, we're just incredibly fortunate to have Hannah on the team because she's excellent. But we do have a fair bit of capacity for Hannah to assist the Elliott State Research Forest, Darren, and of course the board. As things ramp up, if we need additional support, I think that's something we would look at getting a dedicated person for the Elliott and for Darren's group. But I think Hannah's position will be staying in the director's office. And like I said, and if she gets spread too thin, or if there's just a need, we'll have to contemplate that with a position through a policy option package for next biennium for Darren. But right now, I think it's working out so far.
Thank
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
Chris, for jumping in on
I had
that.
one other question. Yeah, I had one other question, Darren. Under professional services, it talks about a branding and communications plan. I've heard the word branding before, but I'm not quite clear on what that is in regards to the Elliott.
So from my understanding, and I think actually Allie's on here too, but so Allie may correct me probably if I'm our communications people or person if I say this wrong. So the intent for that branding project was to, we're thinking about branding, we did a log brand, so not that type of brand, but the branding is kind of the identity for the forest about and the kind of the, usually you'll have like a style guide about how you want things written and maybe a logo and kind of developing that image for the in a way that you'll an identity for the forest that you'll kind of use as we go forward for any type of when we do press releases and public facing documents and those type of things, kind of a guide to follow so we're consistent about how we message and developing those key messages that we would always go back to and touch on when we're doing forward facing communication, those type of things. That's kind of all that wrapped into what that was to have a firm try to look for a company that would help us do that does that kind of work and have us do that for the Elliott. Does that help, Mike, give you a little more of a idea what that's around?
Yeah. Like I said, I'd heard the term before, but I had never been really clear on what it referred to and all. So thank you.
Any further questions on those items? Okay, with that then, thanks for the questions and the answers. Is anybody prepared to make a motion here, which would be to approve the budget for the biennium? And I'll need a second for that as well.
I just have one question, just in terms of being clear about language. This is Peter. If I'm right, it's not really our place to approve the budget. And if that's true, what I think we're doing is making a recommendation to the manager that we are supportive of the budget. But is that correct, or am I missing something there?
Well, the wording we're using is approve and recommend
Okay.
the DSL adopt. So
Okay.
if I had said just approve, then my error. Thanks for pointing that out.
No, well, I just think, and maybe it's just a technicality. I think we're all in agreement about what we're doing here, but that I think our point would be that we recommend, because to say we approve would pretend that we have an authority that we don't have. But again, maybe I'm wrong on that, and I don't need to be nitpicky about it, but just wanted to be clear.
I'm fine with that language. Darren, I don't think that would be an issue if we recommend adoption of the proposed the budget as proposed. Does that work for you, Darren?
Yep, that's what I'm looking for as a recommendation from the
Thanks,
board.
Peter.
Yep.
Great, I'll do that. So I move that we recommend that the budget be adopted as it's been presented.
And
All
I'll
right,
second that.
We have a motion by Peter and a second by Jennifer to recommend adoption of the Elliott State Research Forest budget as it has been presented. Any further questions on that? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify that with your eye. Aye.
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 And those opposed with a nay? Okay, seeing none, that is passed with a unanimous vote. Thank you all. And then the next item for consideration is the Elliott State Research Forest subcommittees. Emma, here you go.
Okay, hi everyone. As you all know, in the oversight structure, which I'm sure everyone reads weekly or regularly, this allows the Elliott board to form advisory bodies or subcommittees that can be used to further important areas of work for the forest. So staff are coming today to recommend the creation of 4 initial subcommittees to support the board's oversight in a few key areas. And that would be research, legislative, education and recreation, indigenous engagement. On page 36, I believe, of your packet, we've outlined the suggested charge of each subcommittee, as well as board members who have expressed interest in joining each subcommittee. The charge of these subcommittees and the people involved in them are subject to change. So in your motion, you do not need to clarify any changes to the charge or the folks involved. There's no known fiscal impact associated with these subcommittees. And so what we're doing is staff is recommending that the board recommend that the Elliott manager form these initial 4 subcommittees. Following your recommendation and after our public meetings law training this afternoon, we'd like to create charters for each subcommittee to describe the authority, the purpose, the scope, function, composition, and coordination of each of the subcommittees to ensure that they are in line with public meetings law. So any questions on what we've brought today or the suggested motion?
Emma, I have one question. This is Peter, and thanks for
Yeah.
all of your work on getting this together. I know that with the research group, we had a potential problem of having too many members and being in violation of public meeting law. So can you talk with us about where we are related to that and how we stay on the right side of what's required?
Absolutely.
Please.
Well, our 5th member, which would have put us at quorum for the research subcommittee, is now been recommended for or has been appointed as DSL's director. So we don't have that problem anymore. We have a new problem that we need to appoint someone for Caitlin's position. So no worries there.
So we'll work at making sure that no committee is more than 4 people. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
No committees are currently at risk of that.
And I'd chime in here. It would be excellent, I think, if each of the board members at least commits time and their input to one of the subcommittees. That's the way it should work. So if you're interested in a particular committee or 2, please let staff know, and we'll work accordingly. But under the understanding, of course, that we may not all get all of the subcommittees we like, because we're limited to how many people we can stick on each one of those.
Yeah, and I will say time commitments can vary for each subcommittee. So the legislative, that will be a temporary committee that will really only convene as we're developing legislative concepts. It won't be, a year-round committee. And then I think, the research subcommittee is also temporary. Once we have our research governance framework and our research program up and running, all those responsibilities currently under the research subcommittee would move to the science advisory committee. So that committee would be dissolved. So as you're thinking about where you want to become involved, just keep in mind it's not the same level of commitment each month or each year for each committee. It'll wax and wane.
And on that, Emma, my elected official background would suggest that we just don't set the legislative subcommittee aside. I think even when we don't have legislative material that we'd like to be considered, I think that it serves our purpose and the Elliott's too, if that committee is in contact with legislators in Oregon, especially those from the region, to keep them up to date on what we're doing here on the forest. So there's probably a little more responsibility for that committee other than just what you mentioned.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments? no raised hands. So with that, I'm going to seek a motion to approve the subcommittees as presented, with the understanding that this obviously can be amended in the future. So with that, I'll seek a motion.
I'll make the motion for that recommendation.
Okay, Jennifer with the motion and a second.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you,
I'll
Haley.
second it.
I think Haley jumped in first. Well done. So we have a motion and a second to approve the structure of the research forest subcommittees as presented. And now, again, by signifying with an aye, that will say you approve, and an A would of course vote against. All those in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well done. Unanimous once again. Thank you. Okay, and we have one discussion item today. I think we're here, and that's the Elliott State Research Forest Work Plan and Meeting Timeline, and should be a new slide on the board. And Darren, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Keith. So on page 38 of the board packet you received, you'll find a copy of this State Research Forest Work Plan, broken out by functional areas. This plan and associated timeline was created in response to a board member request at a previous meeting. We've outlined some key work items and mapped them across these six functional items, which you see as you go through the document, like the first one being governance and oversight, etc. We've included the status of each item and outlined in this document the roles that the staff plays, the board, and the state land board. So that's easily spelled out there. On page 52 of your document, so at the end of this work plan, we've applied those items to our currently scheduled board meetings for the next year, and then listed what we plan to include as general updates, the discussion items or action items, just to give the board an idea of, what's coming up on the horizon, so we can try to stay ahead of that stuff. Of course, this plan and the timeline is a draft and subject to change. Like most things here on the Elliott, it's constantly evolving and changing. So this work plan changes on a fairly regular basis. So you can expect that it's a living document that's, there's going to be updates pretty frequently to it. So just wanted to bring that to your attention, that since this was kind of a request, this is based off of just a little bit of backstory and a little more on this just for transparency and knowing where this kind of came from. This is a product of there was a work plan put together for the first 6 months of the time that came on board, from January through July, of kind of all the things Elliott Forest related that's needed to be done and be worked on. It's even a longer document than this. There's, we didn't include some of the detail behind the scenes things that go on with some of these topics. This was kind of so this is pretty long, and this is the condensed version, if it gives you an idea of kind of all the moving parts that are going on, which I'm sure we all understand with building up and starting up the research forest. There's just a few things that we're all trying to work on. So that's where this came from, was from that request from a board member to, okay, kind of take that and kind of get that into a little bit more of a process that, we as staff, you as board members, can kind of see where you fit in and where we're going to be looking to, where we'd really like you to, where you have a role to play, and to where we're going to want your advice and recommendations at times, and help dig in with now having these subcommittees, or those opportunities for you guys to be, a working board and help the staff with getting things accomplished. So with that, I'll pause, and I hope that you've had a chance to kind of look at this, and if you've got any questions or anything you want to talk about with it, we've got some time. We're ahead of schedule. So,
board members?
I'll just jump in to say I think it's a really super tool, and I find it very helpful given all of the moving parts here, is to actually get on the same page. So I hope you as staff, I know you do find it useful, but it strikes me that particularly, I think as we welcome new board members, we always need to be thinking about how do we help them be as effective as possible. And part of that is having them have access to information that helps them understand like what's going on and how do these pieces work. So I think this will be really helpful for a whole number of good reasons. So thank you.
Mike, you were up next.
Yeah, I'll echo Peter's remarks there too. Very, very helpful. Did have a couple questions. One is regarding for the future budgeting process and all. Just a clarification. Now, when we come up or when you come up with a budget for the next biennium, um, assuming that all the funding is coming from existing funds that come in for the Elliott. Is that something that still needs to go through the legislature to get approval to spend? Even if it was all, timber revenue or carbon revenue or anything like that, does that then need to still go to the legislature to get approval for spending?
So my understanding is, and I'm sure Chris is still on here and can correct me since he's been around longer with this stuff. My understanding is that we still need that permission, that kind of allocation from the authority to spend that money from the legislature. Chris, I don't know if you're still there to correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I think that's right. As the revenue comes in, it'll be deposited into the statutory bucket of the Common School Fund. And then, we'll still be working out of the approved allocated $10 million budget. So yeah, if we needed to spend additional monies as the revenue comes in above that, and we have some flexibility in our overall budget as well. But if we had some other major expenditures, we would likely need to go to the legislature for approval, whether it be in the next biennium or something if needed to be done immediately. Let's say I don't know, fire suppression costs went way up. It might be something we would go to the Legislative Emergency Board for approval. So the money would be deposited into the Common School Fund statutory bucket. And then if we had other expenditures outside of the approved budget, we would go and ask to use the money that's in that bucket to pay for that.
So
Mike?
would so the 10 million that's approved for this time period, that is that essentially how to phrase this? So would it be approved for future bienniums at that level also, or do we need to seek approval each biennium for a budget amount, whether it be the 10 million or 12 or 8 or whatever it might be?
Yeah, good question, Mike. We need to go back and seek approval next biennium for the agency's whole budget, whether it be at current service level or if we're proposing to have it go up. So yeah, it'll be approved again as part of the agency's budget in 27-29.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I also think it's super useful that you've put this together. So thank you for that. And one thing I just want to say I really liked was having items that are there for us to discuss prior to the meeting where we're expected to actually weigh in and make a decision on them. So I just want to say kudos on that, because I think that really sets us up well to be able to ask questions, sort through, provide input, think it all, and then have it come back. So I just think that's really nice the way you've laid it out, and gives us that runway to say, okay, this is what, I understand it might adjust as things come along, but to kind of know what's coming, think about what we might want to bring into a conversation, and then still have time to come back when we're asked to formally make a recommendation on something. So thank you for that in particular.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, we really wanted to we want to make sure that we're being as productive as possible. That makes more sense, obviously, to give you a heads up so that if I'm not just hitting you off the spot hey, I'm just dropping this on you, and hey, I'd like you to respond to me and give me a response. It's a much better much better path to, have that teed up already, have you have a chance to digest and understand what we're talking about, and then come for a follow up with that. So yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, we're all trying to figure this out and kind of work, make sure our workflow is getting even better, so we're even more working together smoothly and productively. So thank you for that.
Haley.
Yeah, thank you so much for putting this together. It's really helpful. I think something I really appreciate is it did help me work through the issue around like who is responsible for what, like what is my job as a board member versus what is your job versus the land board. And it was helpful to see kind of the land board's role articulated alongside. So thanks for the work on that. One question I had is the carbon project piece. I feel like that has been a sticking point for a lot of members of the public. It seems like the past advisory committee, and it seems like our board still has a lot of questions around that. And I know you guys called out board role of that being an update item and discussion and an eventual action item. But it said board update item as requested, and I just think it might be really helpful to regularly talk about that at board meetings, even if it's just a very short blip of like continuing education on it. It seems like every time it's kind of brought up, we're all like, wait, what does that mean? Or can you explain that again? And so just knowing that there is work being done on that and there will be an eventual decision point on that, an action item, I think just kind of continuing education on that frequently at every board meeting might be really helpful and a potential good discussion at the board retreat. And then the second comment, really question I had is, how did you feel putting the work plan together? Did this make any big flags for you all from like a capacity and timeline perspective with current staffing and budget for contracted services, et cetera? Just kind of curious on a gut check and how it felt to you all.
I'll address that first. Well, I'll address the carbon part real quick. And so, yes, I agree with you, and I think that's a pretty easy thing that we can put on just as a standing topic on for our future agendas. And like you said, if there's not much to update on at that particular point, then we won't spend a lot of time on it. But having it on the radar, I think that's great. So if we can do that, Haley, that's an easy um, a thing there. As far as a gut check on this, it's like, of course, it is a little bit, yeah, it's overwhelmed a little bit. If you look at it like, oh my gosh, there's a whole lot of stuff to do. But that's, that's been that way. It's envisioned that being that way for a bit, but it does make it a little bit easier, I think, to see it out this way and just kind of know that you're just taking bites, what they say, bites of the elephant. You're just kind of like, okay, we just got to make progress with this, and we're going to learn some about the costs. You talked about the costs and funding for some of this. Is like we're going to kind of figure some of that out as we're starting to now go operational and start to working with procurement on, like, for example, we're in the midst of starting to do some working on procurement to do some work for the assist with layout and prep and layout for timber sale activity. And so we're going to learn some about what those costs will really look like as we actually start to do the work and actually start to do put that out for requests for bids and do some of that. So some of that's around that part's going to be kind of, these were, the figures around some of the stuff were the best swags of what we thought, not having done this before in this setup as a research forest, and knowing it's like how much in this environment, and how much things are going to cost. It was everybody's kind of best estimate of what we think it's going to cost, and so we're going to learn some of that as we go. So like everything else, we'll adjust and pivot as we need to. But I'm glad to hear that you think that it seems like most everybody's pretty much consensus here on this was helpful for board as well to be able to see, yeah, calling out, where your roles are and who's doing what, so you understand roles. And I think that just makes for clearer communication with all of us going forward, and it'll just make us more effective working together. So thank you for that too, Haley. And I think it was Chris, was your hand up, I think, next. You want to jump in, Chris?
I just was hoping to jump in really quick.
Oh.
I can't figure out how to raise my hand in Zoom, which is humiliating. I'm admitting this to you all. I can't figure it out. In regards to the carbon project, we sent out an update to the board on June 5th that gave a status update on the carbon project and the timeline of how we expect that project to unfold through June 2027. If you're looking for more details than what we have in there, then let's definitely discuss. But I just wanted to direct the board back to that resource. And then also, I think as part of our comms work moving forward, we want to come up with an FAQ on what exactly it means for the Elliott to be enrolled in the voluntary carbon market, so you can anticipate that as well. And that's all for me. I'll hand it off to Chris.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, if Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to add to this because it's going right back to a couple things that have come up. Let's consider for our retreat having our carbon consultants. I forget who they are to present again. It's been a while since we've kind of ran through all of that, and it's probably, to Haley's point, it's probably good education for all of us. So apologies, Chris, and then Peter.
Yeah, no problem. I wanted to correct what I said, Keith and Mike Kennedy. I forgot. We had a Elliott bill pass, which was Senate Bill 147. I'm not sure if it's signed into law yet. Ellie would know, but moving forward, we do have a separate and distinct account for monies generated off the forest. So actually, I think what I said is correct for this biennium, then the $10 million, but the future revenues will get deposited into the forest account. Instead of, and then again, we will have to get expenditure authority from the legislature to spend. It says it's continuously appropriated. Long story short, there will be some tweaks to how monies are spent on the forest based on 147. And let me get back to you on the mechanics of that. So I think that's a good addition moving forward. That's in Senate Bill 147, having its own account at Treasury.
Thank you, Chris. Peter?
Yeah, I just have two quick things. One is, might the document have even more utility if you considered adding one more field? And maybe you've already considered doing this, which would be like basic prioritization. And I know running our own forest business, a thing that we find helpful is we break things into must, should, and could. And that could be, you could break it, slice it and dice it lots of different ways. But I know in your own mind, these are not all created equal. And there's also sort of a temporal one, like what has to get done sooner and what gets done later. But I'll just throw that out and we don't need to discuss it. And I imagine you've already considered it. And the second one is, I really like this connects this actually with our subcommittee group is maybe at some point in the future, we have a placeholder conversation of whether there's, say, one or two board members who make it their business to be as on top of the carbon project as possible. In the same way a board has a treasurer and you turn to the treasurer and say, does this pass the sniff test? It seems like that's something that probably doesn't merit its own subcommittee, but maybe something similar. So maybe down the road we talk about how do we make sure we as a board are as effective as possible at understanding how this is working and being in a position to ask the questions that a responsible board needs to be asking. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter, for that. And yeah, I wanted to address just the prioritization. Yeah, because when I looked at this again this morning, I was like, oh yeah, I should have had that on here. My other version of this does kind of have a little bit of prioritization. That was one thing I don't have on the version I'm using for the board here a little bit. So I guess part of it's because part of it I probably wasn't thinking because part of it's kind of in my brain knowing some of these things are the things coming, especially the things that we're going to be presenting to giving updates to the land board in October. So I know some of these things are kind of at the top of the list, but great point, Peter. And that's something I'll easy fix to add a column on here because I should have done that anyway. So thank you for that.
And Ellie had her hand raised briefly, but I think
Ellie
you all can see that she was just simply letting us know that she's got a link to Senate Bill 147. Thanks for getting that up promptly. And that's the one that Chris mentioned just a moment ago. So it's there for you all to see.
Thanks, Keith. And I'll just hop it. Sorry if the moment is past, but I wanted to jump on and add to what Chris said. That bill will become effective January 1st, 2026. So it's my understanding that that's when the fund would be established at Treasury.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellie.
All right, board members, any other questions here? Okay, Mike, you do have one. Thanks.
Yeah, one more here. I noticed, Darren, under HCP compliance, it mentioned coordination with ICF to ensure stay on track and all. What will ICF's role be moving forward? Are we continuing a contract with them, or how will they be involved?
So the contract with them does still, I think if I'm remembering, it goes into a little bit into next year. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but their role really now is a lot of kind of the crosswalk and kind of transition kind of there's a document that they're working on, kind of a spreadsheet about now for implementation of the HCP to help with all the steps and all the things that we need to do to make sure that we comply with the HCP. So that's one of the things off the top of my head. I know that's one of the things that they're working on is still completing for us to do that. So there's a little bit of that kind of work, just getting us set up for success for as we go to now that we have an approved HCP and are implementing the things that we are now tasked with doing to stay in compliance with it. There's a little bit of that work, and I think Chris, I think you popped on if you had something else you wanted to add there too. No, okay, I saw you pop up there, so I wasn't sure. So yeah, there's some of that kind of work that ICF will kind of be tying off some things with us to make sure we're set up in a good spot to then carry forward as far as implementing that we don't, like I said, especially creating that document for the kind of so it calls out so we're not missing things. We know the things that we need uh, to accomplish and be tracking and monitoring and making sure that's all well identified. So as like I said, as we're going forward, we stay compliant with the agreements that we made in the HCP.
Yeah,
But
good.
their
I know there's a
contract
lot of
will end, in the not too distant future. So
yeah. Okay, good. And then one other thing I asked, if it's possible, under the monitoring, it talks about the MOA with Oregon State University for the baseline data. I know we had conversation about that with OSU many, many months ago, I think. Would it be possible to get a copy of that MOA just so we can see what committed to and all? I'm just curious about some of the things that uh, data
I don't,
ownership and that sort of stuff. Curious.
yeah, I don't see whether there be any issue with that, with doing that. So, and I think there'll be some more information and discussion to come with that. I'm not sure if some of you got to meet last month at the meeting that the two of the people hired by OSU to really be working on driving the implementation of the monitoring, getting the monitoring equipment, that plan set up. We're here in June. Hopefully they were going to try to take advantage of meeting and at least getting faces, some introductions. But I think there'll be some opportunity here, there's also kind of a timetable for that I think we've shared out. I'll make sure that we have that. Kind of the timeline that OSU is on for that as they're developing that monitor plan and figuring out when they're going to start putting equipment on the ground and what their plan is for doing that. I think that's a great topic for us to include for at a future board meeting as well to provide a little more detail for all of you to know where that's at. That's probably something I'm sure you'd like to hear all hear a little bit more about too. So we can make sure we do that too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Okay. Well, so we're at a unique point. We are way early, and not much left to do. And let me do this, and then if there's an extra point that board members would like to bring up, we can certainly roll in that manner. So one of the things that several things have come up today that are sort of expecting a delivery of information. I think Darren, you've been asked to share the MOA on the baseline monitoring with us. Thank you very much, and to kind of keep us up to date with patrols and what's discovered on the forest as readily as you can. I mean, that doesn't have to be 2 minutes afterwards, but in a fashion that keeps us up to date as well. For board members, please send along to staff if you have subcommittee interests, and also I have one other thing there: topics for the next meeting. If you have interest in particular topics, please send that along as well. Remember that you will get a request for input as far as the retreat scheduling. And I think that's it. Is there anything else I've missed in terms of things to expect, or and please jump in and remind me if I didn't get it scribbled down. Okay. Oh, and then the last thing, and as I actually had this down too, from the land board, and we will, and the DSL, we can expect that they will begin the process of finding an excellent replacement for our lost board member, and and as you all know, then that board member will be approved through the land board. So
Happily, she's not lost, just reassigned.
just yeah. I like that's too. That works well. Okay, with that, I think that's everything that is sort of a deliverable for the meeting in the short term. Everybody can expect that, and since we have available time, if there's anything good for the good of the order that you'd like to bring up now, please feel free. And Ryan, hello! I didn't even see that you were there.
Hey Keith. Yeah, I'm just hanging out in the background, just taking everything in, making
All
sure
right.
you guys don't screw things up, Keith.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping us on the straight and narrow for all these years. Thank you.
I'll let you know if you run it into the ditch.
We appreciate it. Anybody else? Board members? All right, seeing none, then I think that I'm going to bang the gavel here in a moment. I want to thank members of the public for being here today, DSL and staff as well for an excellent job. And board members, hope to see you soon. And thanks for your input today.